Welcome to Anchoring the Consciousness of Oneness World Summit. Today we have with us Denise Dolan, who is also a dear friend of mine. Denise guides committed individuals to experience the life they want and love they deserve. She's the co-founder of Love, Life, Wisdom, and the creator of Breakthrough Living Tools, a suite of practices that help committed individuals break through barriers in communication, relationship, intimacy, dating, conflict, and grief. She teaches solo as well as with her husband, Paul, so others can follow in their footsteps to live a happier and healthier life, as well as build their own journey of love on a strong foundation of trust, honesty, and intimacy. Born an intuitive, empath, and medium, Denise has studied with master teachers from diverse wisdom traditions worldwide and dove deeply into understanding relationship dynamics, her worth as a woman, being discerning and choosing a partner, and embodying the secret polarity of the masculine and feminine within. Today, she uses her skills for intuitive guidance, mediumship, facilitating group programs, and community dialogues, including public speaking and coaching individuals and groups. So, thank you, Denise, for being here. I appreciate you so much.
Yes, thank you. My pleasure. It's wonderful to be here. Really appreciate it.
Yes, yes. There's so much to cover. You do so many wonderful things. But let's talk about love, life, wisdom for a minute and the tagline for your business, the life you want and the love you deserve. I love that so much. And this is a co-development with your husband Paul, is that right?
Yes. Um, yeah, it's something that it's work that I've been teaching for a very long time. And I had always wanted throughout the time that I had been teaching this work to have a masculine essence co-facilitator. And so Paul and I are finally, my husband Paul and I are finally doing this together. So I'm very excited.
Wow. Yeah, that's so exciting. And teaching others about the masculine and feminine dynamic and how they, you know, dance together or not, depending on how you're showing up is so important. And having that counterpart to do this work with the man you love, which is absolutely amazing.
Well,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think what I think what helps, what really comes through is that, Paul and I both, before we knew each other, of course, we both led, somewhat conventional lives. And we both had our own businesses. And there came a point where, we had both been married before. And there came a point where things in my life just seemed to explode and things in his life seemed to do the same. And by the time we met, we had really pulled it together internally through a bunch of different practices and just by exposing ourselves to new possibilities and different teachings and different teachers and different wisdom traditions. And each of us had really set foot on this path individually. And then we met on an online dating site, and we actually became friends for 3 years before we got together romantically. And so now it's just wonderful. He just recently sold his business that he had for a long time. And so we're launching together so that we can co-facilitate this work, which I think is really helpful because when you're working with couples, regardless of gender, there's the polarity of the masculine and the feminine. We all have masculine qualities. We all have feminine qualities. And the culture that we live in, it tends to really focus more on the outer senses and the outer world qualities and how to be successful in the outer world. And a lot of people who have a more feminine essence to them, because it isn't really gender based, this work. But those who have a more of a feminine essence, who are more intuitive, more empathic, um, we can struggle sometimes because, especially women with a feminine essence, and even men with a feminine essence, it's like we are rewarded for being very successful in the outer world. And there can be a lack sometimes of resources or where to find those resources of how to develop the inner senses. So the inner senses are what I refer to as more of the feminine. So the five outer senses are designed to interpret the outer world, the five senses.
Mhm.
And then the inner senses, we have these inner organs of perception that really help us to cultivate those inner senses. So we really find that we're in balance when we can rely upon both senses without being lopsided in one direction or the other. So with Paul and I teaching together now, it's wonderful because we have a nice balance where we can address both aspects very easily.
Oh yeah, that's so wonderful. And really, you as a feminine essence being, and as a woman, and all of the inner richness and knowledge, and that what you have access to is so beautiful. And then having that balance, that is so wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah. So tell me, there's so many things that you do, and I want the viewers to get this full picture, because your uh, and modalities and all the things, and I know you don't like to use that word, but I can't think of another one. There's so many different things that you do. It's so diverse. Um, I met you through a friend. Like actually, people just kept introducing me to different people, and then I was just led right to you a couple of years after my son passed away, and so you do mediumship work, and that you changed my life, um, and bringing him in, or holding the space for him to come and give messages that were so important to my healing and my own development, as a human being. Like, um, this is one of those aspects of the feminine essence, the unseen, the mysterious, that you bring, and you do it so beautifully. Um, I would like to talk about that a little bit, if that's all right with you. I know that there's a lot of people, or maybe some people who might not really understand what this is and how it works, and maybe a bit skeptical. Um, but I just want to say that, in coming to you, and we had that initial meeting, and I could feel the energy in the room, when we were talking about, doing the work. And then it came back, and immediately when you made contact with my son, I knew it was him because of the way that he came through. And so yeah, if you could talk about that a little bit, and how you uh, began doing this work in the first place.
Yeah, it's very interesting because I just thought or believed that when people, quote, die, that we still have access to them. And in ways that can even be more profound than when our loved ones are in physical bodies. And so I discovered this when I was young. I was, I think, 11 years old or so, when my cousin Chucky passed away in a car accident, and he was only 21 years old. And shortly thereafter, I started feeling his presence with me so strong. I'd be walking home from school along the sidewalk, and all of a sudden I would feel like Chucky was walking next to me and giving me messages and talking to me. And like, I never heard anybody else mention this or talk about this possibility. Um, so there was a part of me that intuitively thought, wow, this is a little odd. And then there was another part of me that was just elated. And he was giving me information and messages that were unquestionably him, and even left there were some physical things that happened, like um, the year before he passed, his family, my aunt and uncle, had brought him and his siblings to our house for Christmas. And I was given a pogo stick that year, and I had no idea how to use a pogo stick. And Chucky showed me how to use that pogo stick to the point where it wasn't just like fun, like recreation. I would use it as transportation. I would pogo stick around the neighborhood with this thing, right? So when he first came through to me after he passed, I thought, I said, if this is really you, if this is really happening, and I was only, I think, like 11 years old, I said, you have to give me a clear sign that this is you. And when I got home from school, lying across the driveway diagonally was that pogo stick. And it had not been out, it had not been seen for some time. And I ran in the house and I asked my mom, did you have the pogo stick out? She's just like, no. And I asked my brother and my dad, and nobody knew what I was talking about. And that was just so clear to me. I was like, wow, like I didn't even actually think we still had the pogo stick. I didn't even think it was still around anymore. But more, than that were just messages that I was asked to relay to others that made sense to others. So I thought, okay, well, that's really wonderful. Like, because we lived in 2 different states growing up and we didn't get to see each other a whole lot. And so I thought, well, wow, and people, quote, die and we can see each other more often. That's really a cool thing. But then when I was 14, I heard a loved one sharing with somebody else that anybody who thinks that they can see or hear the dead, are crazy, there's something wrong with them, and, perhaps should be locked up. And that scared me. And I thought, well, I'm not going to tell people about this anymore. I'm not going to bring this up to anyone. So I just kind of kept it quiet. And then when I was about 22 years old, my maternal grandmother passed. And she came through with some very, very clear, specific information. And she came through repeatedly. And when I shared the information with my mother and my grandfather, they just started crying and they said, how do you know this? How could you possibly know this? And I said, because grandma is telling me and she's asking me to share it with you. And then I started having dreams and visitations from people I had never met before, but I knew their loved ones and physical. So they started coming through, excuse me, and asking me to please relay messages to their loved ones. And I was still scared. I mean, I was 22 years old at the time. And it took me 7 years before I relayed that first message because I was so afraid that I might traumatize this particular family. A loved one came through who had passed tragically and they never found the body. And I didn't say anything for 7 years. And so something came up 7 years later where I was with the daughter of the person who passed. And she made a comment to me and I just knew I had to share the message with her at that point. And she said that if there was a way for her father to have come through, he would have, and that she no longer believed in an afterlife because she knew her dad would have come through to her. And the fact that he never did, she said, my whole sense of religion is just shot. And I knew then it was time to tell her. And I said, it was just a dream. Take it with a grain of salt, if it doesn't make any sense to you. And it made apparently a huge difference for her and for her family. So then I made a commitment to myself that I would, if I ever received a message for somebody, I would ask them permission if they wanted to hear it. And to date, nobody has ever said that they did not want to hear it. So it's a hard thing to understand if you haven't had the firsthand experience yourself. And many people I work with have never had this experience before. And people are understandably a little anxious or a little nervous about it. And when I provide a session, I always offer complimentary consultations first that are 15 minutes or so, just to give people an idea as to what to expect and how the process works. And then if they decide that they want to go ahead with the paid session, I offer them that. And the sessions that I offer might be a little different from the way some other people do this. I offer 2-hour sessions, and that gives enough time for us to do a meditation. We light a candle, we create an intention. And what I have found is that so often, which I think might have been your experience as well, that when a loved one is no longer in physical form, what it means is that we just cannot locate them in the physical and in a specific geographical location in the physical world, in the physical realm. But we can still access that soul. We can still access that person who we love. And when they come through, they typically have so much to share with the loved ones who are here in the physical that I do not want to rush that process. And I tend not to look at the clock. I really want it to be um, an enriching process for the person who has the session. So there are 2 hours. Sometimes people hear 2 hours, but there's other things in there, and then we have like 15 minutes afterwards just to chat about it, decompress a little bit. Um, so yeah, I, for me, it's been a natural ability that I've had my whole life. As I said, I thought everybody had this ability. I do believe everyone does have the ability and that we can cultivate these abilities. We just happen to live in a culture that doesn't really encourage that or even really know how to encourage that, right?
Yeah, that was my experience. I mean, after having that experience with you and having access to my son, who, he said, I don't belong to you. It's like we've been doing this, oh, for many lifetimes, and that was something pretty amazing because that's goes back to our previous conversations when he was in physical form. But that experience alone, um, not only erased this layer of grief that was kind of blocking me from lots of things, including accessing him. So when that layer of grief was removed, I could access him by myself. And but it was different, right? I knew what was happening. I can't, it was hard to explain. Sometimes he was bringing me things in the physical, like emails, like right at his birth time. Here's a mantra meditation. We talked about that in the session. And it's like I get home and it's there, in my email, and all these synchronicities. I mean, you were talking about that, the synchronicities that occur. They're around us all the time. We just sometimes we're not looking for them, right? So when you start to look for them, or you start to know, or you get the knowing, you gain that knowingness of, yes, these things occur, you will see them. And so there's been so many instances where um, Trey has let me know that he is with me. And in at certain times of my life when I needed to make decisions, that a synchronicity would occur, and I knew what to do. So it really is, it requires the knowing, right? It's like open the door and then, know this is a thing, and then you don't get to unknow that. So then like this, it starts to happen. And oh my goodness, like my life has been so enriched by this experience. And like, I just never, I had lived a pretty conventional life too before my son passed, and my life looks nothing like that now. And yeah, so it's amazing. And there's so much on the other side that we just don't even think about it. And I know there's so much more. I mean, I'm just like, I'm feeling all this emotion. I'm so happy. It raises your vibration to the level of joy when you get to know what's going on and you get to experience these synchronicities. And then you really do gain a deeper understanding of the concept of oneness. We're all connected. And just because you drop the body, when nobody's getting out of here alive, we drop the body, we're still energy, and we're still, you know, connected. So it's beautiful. I just appreciate you so much for that. You literally changed my life. You've done so many things. I mean, you've uh, worked with lots of very wise teachers. Um, uh, Gosh, Don Miguel Ruiz. and Dr. Michael Bernard Beckwith. Um, there's so many things. So you're a licensed New Thought minister, right?
Mhm.
And you got licensed from studying under Dr. Beckwith. Can you talk about that and what that means, a New Thought minister?
Yeah, I studied with him for a short time. I actually lived on the East Coast and I used to fly to the West Coast every week to participate in a weekly class. Um, so Michael Beckwith is one of my teachers, and I ended up finishing my courses on the East Coast and got licensed on the East Coast. But you know, um, I was leading a very conventional lifestyle, as I mentioned earlier, and I was the co-founder of a multinational consulting firm, and I was of the U.S. division, and you know, I started to have more and more of these experiences where some people say it's piercing the veil. I could see, I could hear other, you know, those who had like dropped their bodies or were no longer in physical form. And I no longer even look at it as like being on another side, like there are two sides. The way that it appears to me now is that when we are in a physical body and we're in the physical reality, our vibration, so to speak, is vibrating very slowly and gives us the appearance of, physical matter and light and dark and shadows. And when we leave, we no longer have a physical body. It's almost like the vibration is spinning faster and wider. And so the frequencies are different. The frequency of existence is a little bit different. So in the non physical realm, it's like that frequency is a higher frequency. It's spinning so fast that you can miss it. You don't see it with the physical eye. And this is where we talk about the inner organs of perception and developing the inner senses, which the inner senses are typically associated as feminine essence traits, and then the outer senses as masculine essence traits. So, as a current humanity right now, we're doing a pretty good job of, um, knowing the five senses, the physical senses that help ground us in the outer world. But the inner world really has a lot of room for exploration. And so that's how I experience it, is that we are all one. And when we tune in, it's like we have to lift our vibration, and loved ones sometimes lower theirs so that we can have a clear connection. And yeah, it is. It's life changing. I mean, it's absolutely life changing. There are even experiences I've had where, well, I was doing this for other people, and my grandmother came through to me, and my cousin came through. Lots of other people I love have dropped their body. And I would struggle to try to, I had my own little block that would prevent me from connecting with those that I love. So I learn from this every time that I do it. And when I see the profound healing that takes place, and you're one of the examples of that, is when I got to see how profoundly healing this could be for people, I realized, I was like, I can't really keep this to myself. So I had this very conventional lifestyle, and I was running this, the US division of this firm, loved what I did. And I just kept feeling this nagging pull inside of me saying that there was more. I was meant to be doing something different. I was meant to be doing something completely different. And I kept trying to justify it. So when I became, a new thought minister, it's it's learning more from a perspective of learning from different religious and spiritual traditions, um, and looking and seeing the commonality and the overlap. There's so much overlap. And when we're raised in a particular way, like for example, when we're born, we are not thinking as an infant about a gender. We are not thinking I'm a male or a female, or, I have whatever color skin I have, or a political association, or a particular religion or language. We're taught all of this. So we're conditioned and we're domesticated depending on which part of the world we are born and where we are raised. that's what we take on. And then we identify ourselves as that religion. We identify ourselves as a political affiliation, as a color, as a nationality, etc. Yet a lot of that just has to do with where we happen to be born and who our parents are and the community that we're born into. So in as a New Thought minister, the studies were really helpful to me because I wanted to better understand the abilities that I was born with. And to a certain degree, they help with that. That wasn't really the focus of the studies. So I didn't get everything I needed from that or wanted from that, but I got other things. And through that practice and through that training, I was able to reach a lot more people, and still am. The training is just beautiful because it explores diverse and indigenous wisdom traditions, which are extremely appealing to me. We tend to think sometimes, the way that we're raised is the only way. And then when we start to study and explore these different religious traditions and spiritual traditions, wisdom traditions, start to see the overlaps and how many traditions have been in existence far longer than sometimes the ones that we were raised with. So it's a really eye-opening, heart-opening process to see that there is so much overlap there.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, and that creating an expansion of, where you've got a lot more room for all of these different ways of being and thinking and existing and moving through the world. Um, I mean, you've done so many things. You're a certified practitioner of Jinshin Jitsu and Qigong.
Yeah.
So, um, you know, and so that, and then also you're certified to teach the Four Agreements, which is my absolute favorite book in the world. I keep it by my bed because like you can just flip it to any area and it's always what you need. So, so tell me about those things and how you got involved with Don Miguel Ruiz, and then becoming a certified practitioner of those important modalities.
Yeah, so I've always been interested, obviously, in understanding more about these sort of mystical traditions because of the abilities that I was born with. And it was just it was just shocking to me to discover as a teen and in my 20s and 30s that like everybody can do this. Why are they looking at me? Like everybody can do this, right?
Yeah.
So for whatever reason, I was born with a memory of accessing these abilities. And I really wanted to learn. I really wanted to learn more about it. I remember in college writing a letter to my Italian Catholic, grandmother and grandfather that I had this ability and wanted to learn more about it. And I received a beautiful handwritten letter back from my grandfather telling me to go talk to the local priest about it. And I just knew intuitively that was not going to help me. That is not the route I wanted to take. And then, interestingly enough, this is just registering now as I'm sharing this. My grandmother passed a few years within that time, and then she started coming to me and started teaching me about this. And she came to me for several years and with very profound information and lessons and information to share with others that was helpful. So I really wanted to learn and I didn't know where to go. I mean, I had my traditional, conventional, religious upbringing, but I didn't meet anybody in any position of authority who was able to assist me in understanding these abilities that I was born with. So I started to reach out. So I was kind of living, I wasn't living two lives. I had my consulting business, and then I learned about Jinshin Jitsu, which is an ancient Japanese healing art, very similar to acupuncture. We listen to the pulses. You can tell where the energy is flowing, where you need help to open up energy, where it's blocked, where it needs to be increased, where it needs to be calmed or harmonized. And it's very much in keeping with my understanding of, how to connect when we don't have a physical body. There's energy. Everything is made up of energy, right? We all hear energy can't be destroyed, it can only be transformed. And so our physical existence is also made up of energy. And when the energy patterns are flowing in harmony, the energy pattern of every organ that we have, right? There are energy patterns that flow, and as they are flowing in harmony, then we experience greater harmony in our life. So it's a very powerful practice. And I learned it because one of my corporate clients at the time uh, heard about this class, and she's like, "Come on, let's sign up and take this class together." And it was 2 full weekends, and I was like, I don't want to spend all that money in 2 full weekends to take a class in something I don't even know how to pronounce and all of that. And it was offered in a hospital, and I just thought it was like hocus pocus. I mean, see, there's a real dichotomy within me because I was living that conventional lifestyle, although I had these abilities. So I didn't see the irony in that at the time. So I signed up for this class, and it was offered in a hospital. And it was a profound moment during that training because there was a little girl in the hospital who had been in a coma, and she was 4 years old. And the pediatricians, the pediatrics department, they came down to speak with our teacher. And it was a Friday night. That was the first night of the class. And they said, if you can do anything to help this child, we are going to lose her. There's nothing we can do medically, and we're going to lose her within 24 to 48 hours. Can you please help? And that was Friday night. And then Saturday morning, we started the class. And after lunch on Saturday, the teacher came in. There was over 70 of us taking the class in the hospital. So that gave it a little more credibility for me at the time. And she said, I just worked on this girl, and her energy is really stuck, and I don't think she's going to make it. And in my arrogance and judgment, I thought to myself, of course she's not going to make it. The whole pediatrics department has been down here and already said she's not going to make it. So this teacher just has to cover herself and explain, the mind, very arrogant, very judgmental. And a little after 4 o'clock that same Saturday, we're sitting in class listening to the teacher of Jin Shinjitsu give us the lecture. And somebody just came bursting through the back of the room and just yelled out from the back of the room that this girl just came out of her coma. And you could just hear a pin drop in the room. And I got so emotional at the time. It was a real moment of transformation, a moment of awakening for me. I realized that just because I don't understand things with my human mind does not mean they do not exist. And, the basis of all science is exploring and discovering. So then I started listening more carefully to other people in the class and why they were there. And they had all healed of something that they, quote, shouldn't have healed from, without having more of a conventional medical intervention. And so it got my attention, and it was just like, that was a life-changing moment. So eventually I ended up leaving the consulting business. I resigned from that in order to start an actual healing practice. So that was just one little thing that really opened me up. And then we worked with, I was volunteering with Dr. Oz. This is before he became famous. And I was actually able to work with the other Jin Shinjitsu practitioners, and we brought that healing discipline into a local hospital system. And every single person who was diagnosed with cancer was offered and told about, that this was available to them. And so I ended up developing a private practice of many people who were going through cancer treatments, and the oncologists were referring them to me. So, and that was back in, early 2000s, and is still being offered today in those hospitals up in New Jersey. So I'm really proud about that. I feel good about that.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. The story of the little girl, who came out of a coma. That's that is amazing. I think that I would have been just as emotional. But that's really great.
Yeah.
It's still happening, and um, so you're using this as part of some of the work that you're doing as a mindful living and relationship coach. Is that right? It's like you're taking all of these different pieces, and you have built this wonderful suite of services, if you will.
Yeah, so yeah, that's how I got into the Toltec wisdom with Don Miguel Ruiz. I noticed that in the yeah, when I was studying to become a minister, I noticed there were these two women who just had a profound shift in them. And I went up to them and I said, "What are you studying? Who are you working with? What are you doing? Because there's been such a shift in you." Like, they were more joyful, they were laughing more, they were more open, they were more. And they told me about the Toltec wisdom. And I said, "Well, I want to learn more about that." And so I signed up to work with Don Miguel Ruiz. And he had had a heart attack shortly thereafter that. So the teachers that he was working with started taking over and teaching. So I started working with them. Gary Van Warmerdam is one of them. And Brent Morgan was another. And I was actually one of the few people back then to become certified by the author. It's a best-selling book, The Four Agreements, and I was one of the people who was certified by him to teach that work. And of course, there are many, many more books now. And it's just for me, it was something that was easily accessible. The teachings made sense to me. You don't have to believe it. And I really appreciate offering tools and practices to my clients where you don't have to change your belief system. Just practice, just engage in it and be your own testimonial. Same with Jin Shin Jitsu. It's like you don't have to believe anything. Just try it. Become your own testimonial. See how it works for you in your life. And that's the approach I take. So, with Jin Shin Jitsu, Qigong, with Toltec wisdom, I've worked with shamans, in Peru and Mexico, all drug free, by the way. None of the teachers, I know it's very popular today, and for some people it works. They call it, plant medicine or spiritual medicine, but none of the teachers I worked with would ever allow us to do that. We had to do it naturally,
Mhm.
because otherwise it could potentially become another distraction and something else that we're addicted to, like, oh, let me go take more of that so I can become clear. And I feel very strongly about that we all have the ability to open ourselves for clarity, for vision, for possibilities. And so everything that I teach is really just approaching life and love from different angles, because certain angles are going to work better for some people, and certain facets will work better for others. So I love having this whole backpack, filled with these, what I call breakthrough living tools. And I can see, working with people, whether it's in programs or individually, what might work for us one day may not work 3 hours later, or the next day. So I really strongly believe we need to have all the right tools and insights so that we become masterful at learning which tool does what. And that's what I love, is I love to empower my clients to learn about these different tools and know how to use them. And if one doesn't work, do not despair. There will be another one that's appropriate, right? So anything related to really the invisibility of, the spirit. What makes you excited to jump out of bed in the morning? When do you feel happy and on purpose and joyful? And for me, my work is just a playground. I love my work. Like, I do not feel like I'm working. I am just enjoying myself so much in what I do, because I love to um, provide tools to others to awaken and jumpstart, their own lives so that they can live joyfully and they can live with love and know how to vet a partner, if they're single or if they're in a relationship, how they can turn around relationship dynamics. That was something I was not good at all in my younger days. I was very good in business and making money and working the ways of the outer world. And I was so rewarded for that financially, in the culture that we live in, that I did not know how to be at ease and and open my heart, which was more of my feminine essence. So I was very much, even though I'm a very feminine essence, I was very much in my masculine. And so that doesn't work very well. When you have a feminine essence, that can depolarize a relationship. So I really wanted to learn about that. So it was really a combination of wanting to learn more about, and there's such an irony here, right? Because the feminine essence is having all those inner abilities, but at the same time, I had all the walls up, and I would share it when a specific incident came up and I was asked to share something. I would ask permission and then share that information, but I wasn't really fully putting myself out there. I wasn't allowing myself to be vulnerable. I wasn't opening my heart and saying, this is who I am, this is what I can offer. And that's been a work in progress. And so learning all these things, studying all these traditions has been extremely meaningful in helping me to open myself up and develop those inner senses and bring them in harmony with my masculine essence traits, so I can be in harmony and experience my own sense of polarity in the world.
Yeah, definitely. I love that so much. I mean, I think it's a pervasive issue for those who prefer or naturally lead with their feminine essence, to be in this world because we are so conditioned to to move through the world in such a masculine energy. Like, it's expected of you in the workplace, and just in thinking about couple generations back, there was this whole, well, the feminist movement. It's just it's important to be able to do everything a man can do and do it better. And you can tackle your womanly duties, right? Which is so strange. And then and still show up, in the workplace and do it like a man does. And so, yeah,
Yeah,
it's so confusing for women to have to split themselves like that. There is a balance, but it's not
for
imba-
everyone. Yeah, it's been confusing for everyone. And
yeah.
with the feminist movement, it was like it was part one of really opening. And as a woman, with a feminine essence, I can say that I want to be honored and respected for, as a woman, and for my feminine essence traits and my masculine essence traits. But I don't want to have to act like a man or dress like a man or compete to be respected and to be cherished and to be honored. And so for me, that was the difference when because the business I was in too was a very masculine business. It was technology. And when I was in it, I was one of the few women who were in it. And I was one of the youngest women in it at the time. Um, there's a funny story about that. Comdex is like one of the largest, computer and technology trade shows that takes place every year. The one would take place in Las Vegas every year. And I remember it was the first or second year that I was there. And, I had my suits, but I look like a feminine essence, and I had my suit on and I was there. And I remember I was waiting in the lobby. I was sitting in the lobby of one of the hotels, and I was waiting for one of my business partners to come so we could start walking through the booths. And a man approached me and he said, "How much do you charge?" And I was so naive. I was like, what? And he said, how much? Because I'm thinking, charge for what? Like, I'm not at a booth. I'm just sitting here. And I said, charge for what? And I said, what? And he goes, oh, I'm so sorry. And it took me a few minutes to recognize. He thought because I was a woman and I was young, that he made an assumption that I was for hire as a paid sex worker. I was
What?
like, that just sums up the industry back at that time, and the time that I was working through that. So it was very interesting for me. I was very conscious of wanting to be in my feminine essence, but not be threatening as a feminine essence, and have that balance of masculine. And it was something that I consciously had to work around in that industry, in that business. So I think we're in a much different time now. Things are really opening, and it's opening for men and for women, because as things open for women and we feel safe to be more of who we are, and not only feel safe, but that we are fearless to be who we are, and we are fearless, allowing our feminine essence to shine fearlessly. That is helpful to everyone, because all compassion and understanding, forgiveness comes through the feminine essence traits, right? And our masculine essence is the part of us that puts up walls for protection and says, no, go away, don't come near me. So we need this discernment, and we need this polarity to be harmonized and in balance to live a balanced life. And so we're in a time now where women are beginning to blossom, and it can be challenging because we don't have a lot of training. We don't have a lot of modeling for how do I allow myself to be vulnerable and open, right? And fearless, but at the same time being discerning and being watchful, and keep my heart open, because an open heart is a feminine essence trait. Protection, keeping ourselves, that's the masculine essence trait. In many, in some of the indigenous cultures, when women would dance, because it's non-linear, right? So that's a way to move a lot of energy and to experience more of the feminine essence. So when women dance together in a circle, the men would encircle the women and face outward to make sure nothing would come in to interrupt them, so they would be safe, so they could dance and lift up their feminine vibration.
Oh,
So
wow.
I think we're in a much different place today with that, and it's something that we all grapple with as women.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And then when we uh, don't pay attention or care for our feminine essence, then we and move into the masculine and stay there, that it becomes toxic. And then, that pushes men into their, I don't like to say toxic femininity and masculinity, because there's uh, definitions attached to those now, and I think it's largely misunderstood. But when we're not really showing up in our full essence in a balanced way, then we're not making it easy for those who naturally lead with their masculine to show up in a healthy way either. And so, this is lessons that we that we learn along the way, and I have just learned that myself. So, um, yeah, the work you do is amazing. I mean, it truly, and it all weaves together. It's all so important. You talked about, understanding the polarities, and then also having the tools to communicate. Those two things that aren't taught together most of the time, right?
Right. And the self-awareness, right? So many times we can go and we can take classes and join community and engage in practices that help us to increase our sense of self-awareness. And so the more self-aware we become, the more important it is to have our communication skills honed, so that we can communicate in a way where we can fully express and have mutual dialogue, not just, oh, here's what I need and here's what, I'm seeing, but what are you experiencing? How does this land on you? How do we work on this together as a team? whether it's a personal or a professional relationship. So these communication skills, as you know, because you're trained as a conflict resolution trainer as well, we need to understand these skills. And very often when we hear conflict, we think conflict is, fighting, or it's physical abuse. No, conflict is, just having a conflict about people pleasing. Somebody wants to go out with you for lunch or take a walk during a pandemic, a walk, and outside, and being afraid to say no because of the people pleasing mentality of, oh, I want to be liked, or I don't want to disappoint them. But there's so many ways to communicate effectively. Like, I would love to take a walk, yet today will not work for me, or this, I have a lot on my plate over the next 2 weeks, but if we could postpone it for 3 weeks, that would be great. I'd love to do it. Just having the clarity of what we want to experience, and being able to communicate that in a way that is inviting, and that keeps our hearts open, that where we keep our heart open, and the person we're communicating, or the people we communicate with, can keep their hearts open as well. It leads to deeper understanding, and deeper understanding can lead to deeper trust. Trust does not come from thinking the same way. There are 7 billion people on the planet. We are never going to think the same way. I mean, any of you listening with a family, you know how many different viewpoints there are in one family or in a marriage. It's not about thinking the same way. It's about understanding why we think in the ways that we do.
Yeah.
And space for that. The other thing is, we're talking about this, that's been a major thing for me, has been living and studying in India to learn yoga. I just feel so incredibly fortunate to have had that experience, and it's ongoing. I continue to study. I met a teacher from India in the States. A friend, an acquaintance, had introduced him to me, and it was very interesting. When I met him, all he did was take my hands. He looked me right in the eyes and he said, "When are you coming to India?" And this was remarkable because I had a written intention. This is one of the tools that I teach my clients, right? So I had a written intention that I was living in India for 3 to 6 months. And I looked at him and I said, well, that's interesting that you say that, because I have this intention, but I have no idea why or where I would go, or like what is calling me there. I don't know. I have no logical reason to go to India, but there's something in my spirit that is pulling me there. And just no small talk, nothing. He said, now you have a place to come and you will work with the children. I didn't know what he meant, but on a soul level, I knew. I was like, uh-oh, I'm going to India. That was in June. And then the following January, I was there. And so it was an incredible experience. This is what I call a master teacher. Anand Mehrotra is his name. And he's the founder of Sattva Yoga, which is Sattva. And he taught me, I've learned a lot from him and continue to learn a lot from him. But there are these things called kriyas. When we think about yoga, we might just think about, standing on your head or doing poses that get you in a little pretzel. Yoga is a lifestyle. It's a whole way of being. It's a whole way of living. It includes the yoga poses, which is called the asana. It also includes meditation. It includes breath work, breathing the right way so that we oxygenate everything that needs to be, refreshed. There are also kriyas, and then there's a community piece. There's all these aspects to it, but the kriyas are these very unusual movements that literally shake trauma and clear out the nervous system and balance the right brain and the left brain. It allows the organs, to function at full capacity. There's so much to this. And this has helped me tremendously. So it's something that I include and incorporate with my clients. And very often I'll, videotape. And part of what my husband are going to be offering with Love Life Wisdom is a membership community where community is so important, because when we're learning new things, we need to have other people to share them with and bounce them off and practice with and have accountability with. So, we provide wisdom talks and inspiration, as well as, meditations and these short little sets to help clear this stuff out so that we can live fully. Otherwise it's like we have this energy just weighing us down. And as great as the gym is and working out, um, that can actually compress the trauma inward, whereas the kriyas shake it outward. So having a combination is really, really valuable. So that's another aspect that is included in the work that we teach, as well as the ancient. I've done a lot of studying of the ancient Vedic teachings, and the Bhagavad Gita is something that I don't teach it from. It's not taught from an academic perspective, but from an actual experiential of how we can apply the wisdom, as well as the ancient science of Jyotish, which is really understanding what we are made out of and how we can use the elements to experience greater balance and harmony in our lives. And again, this is just something that we're not necessarily taught on a day-to-day basis. It's like we all know on a full moon, there can be more crime, there can be more births, there can be more depression, and the elements and the configuration of how the planets are moving have an impact on us. So it's important to understand this, and that we have cycles in life. And one of the things that I learned in India that I was not aware of is that we have cycles in our lives where there's certain cycles where we need to be much, they're invitations to be very aware, because we have opportunities to grow and to learn and evolve every day. No matter what we experience, everything is an opportunity to grow and evolve. As long as we are in a physical body, we have that opportunity. And nothing is happening to us. Everything is happening for us, no matter how tragic it is. And we've all experienced tragedy in our lives, right? So yes, we feel pain. And, it's like that old saying of, that, the pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. And the first time I heard that, I was like, what does that mean? And maybe you can relate to this, Sarah, through the loss of your son. It's like, yeah, we have to feel pain, but the suffering keeps us stuck in that pain. And suffering is like, where we pitch a tent and we can't get out of that place. And I think this is really the importance of learning how to open the heart and develop those inner organs of perception and those abilities that we've been talking about throughout our time together here. Because when we're solely focused on wanting the outside world to be a certain way, and we're almost trying to like direct people or things, to unfold in a certain way so that we can be okay, that takes a lot of energy. It's very manipulative, right? Whether we're conscious of it or not. So when we learn to shift that energy and learn about what can I do within myself so that I am okay. Like, I'm not expecting other people to show up the way I want them to, or circumstances or life, but I know how to respond rather than react or collapse, that I can continue to grow and expand and evolve. And I think that developing the inner senses truly helps to alleviate that suffering, because we're no longer dependent upon the external world to show up for us in a very specific way. It's like, something shows up, something is unpleasant, okay, we know how to move through it. Something shows up that's pleasant, okay, that's great, we know how to move through that as well. So it's really approaching life from a much more balanced, clear way.
Yeah, that's really important for people to know. We do spend a lot of time, or many of us spend a lot of time trying to control the external reality, when really what that is a mirror for what's going on within here. And so when we can go within and create some balance there, we will see it reflected to us in our reality. And and it's always true. That is always true. So yeah, you have so much to give people who are looking for, uh, you know, that balance, and in all kinds of ways, through relationships and the inner self, and moving through grief, and all these things, and everything is woven together. And so, in our coming together, I've learned so many things and ways to shake out trauma and stuff, and still use those techniques today. And you're, talking about Kriyas, one thing when you mentioned that, it reminded me, because everything's interwoven. We're all connected. Like you're saying, like nothing's happening to you; it's happening for you. And the reason why is because we're all divinely, we're a divine piece of everything. Like we are the universe, and the universe, or God, or whatever you want to call it, doesn't matter. If we're a part of that, why would it want us to hurt, right? So, we're in this place of duality. We're going to have pain and pleasure and all the things, and suffering is the choice. But man, you really just tie it all together. And I'm thinking about when I was on my way to, for our session, our 2-hour session, to so you could bring in Trey, and I could have these conversations with him. This Kriya Yoga app just started playing on my phone and wouldn't turn off. I couldn't make it stop. It was just playing. And I think when I got out of the car, I had to pull my phone wouldn't even turn off. I had to pull the battery out of my phone and to make it stop. And then I came in and I told you about it, and you're like, "Oh wow, that's really amazing," because Paul and I have just signed up for this Kriya Yoga course or something. I'm just like, what in the world? It's like, it's we are so connected. And and really, and asking someone to trust in the universe when they don't, you know it's almost a cruel thing, right? But if we go within and we start to get the answers in here, and build the self-awareness, which peels the layers of judgment, we can get closer. So yeah, I mean, you bring it all together in this one beautiful package. So thank you for that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's my greatest joy, is that, I've curated many different teachings, from diverse wisdom traditions. And because everything that you're saying is very difficult, it's very difficult to comprehend that, well, wait a minute, it's a mirror. I'm a mirror. Or, I have to look inside, or we're all one. These are very challenging concepts. And it's not a matter of asking people to believe it. For me, it's more a matter of providing the tools and saying, okay, this is happening in your family, this is happening in your relationship, or at work, or in the world. So let's work on how you can cultivate um, presence and clarity to show up as best you can in these circumstances. And so that's all it really is, right? And when we talk about we're all one, it's like, and there's no sense of, quote, death. When the leaf is falling from the tree, it doesn't scream, no, I don't want to go. No, what's going to happen to me? The leaf just serenely floats through the air, and it lands where it will, and it becomes food and or fertilizer. And very often it becomes fertilizer for the soil of the tree that birthed the leaf to begin with. And so how does that leaf die? It's just that energy. It's just the energy transforms, it transmutes itself from a leaf attached to a tree to food, to fertilizer that helps regrow, and continue to grow that tree. So that's the way it is. Our energy is constantly in motion, right? So the idea that the only thing that we can really truly count on is change. Change is the only thing that we can count on. Nothing else can be counted on other than that, right? And there are tools and there are practices that can help us live in this very balanced way. And some tools will work for some people that don't work as well for others, right? So that's why I'm really a believer of using this stuff for yourself. Be your own testimonial. Like, nobody can turn the key and open the door for anybody else. We all have to do it. We all have to put our hand on that doorknob, turn it, and walk through the door. Nobody can do that for us, but we can be guided by people who have already done that and receive that guidance and allow it. I'm so grateful to all the teachers that I currently have and that I have had in my life. And yeah, I remember when that app was playing that you told me about, that was Sadhguru, actually.
Yes, it was.
And yeah, I mean, and this is just the irony of how life works. Here you're coming for your first session to connect with your son, right, who had passed his physical form, and your phone. I mean, it was crazy. Your phone is playing a healing mantra from India that you can't turn off. And and coincidentally, my husband and I were just enrolling in that particular program, which was inner engineering at that time.
Oh.
So yeah, all these things just come together, and these are just sort of signs to show us, like guideposts of, okay, wow, how could that be? Things that you can't rationalize, but in your spirit, and nobody else can talk you in or out of it, right? So I don't try to talk anybody into or out of believing anything. It's just be your own testimonial, have your own experience. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Yes. So before we say goodbye, can you tell the viewers what you're working on right now?
Well, yeah, like I said, we're Paul, my husband, Paul Rogers, and I are working on Love Life Wisdom.
Mhm.
So we are just repackaging the tools and programs. And we're going to be offering this community membership program that I mentioned. And we will be offering more relationship programs. We have a relationship with everything and everyone, right? So to me, that's the heart of everything, is harmonizing my relationship to self, harmonizing my relationship with my loved ones, with the world, with the work that I do, with people who are important to me. And yeah, so we're going to be offering a whole variety of wisdom and wisdom talks and meditations and short little yoga exercises and kriyas to help purge trauma and balance out the brain. And we'll be offering coaching and teaching about polarity and really how to deepen understanding and trust and intimacy and existing with an existing partner. For those who don't have an existing partner, we help to vet a partner who is going to be compatible. That was an area that I really struggled with, all those things. So would hate to see other people study, unnecessarily, struggle unnecessarily. Yeah, so we're offering all of that. So that should be going live first quarter of 2021.
Yes, that's really exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
awesome. Well, thank you so much, Denise. Thank you for
Thank
sharing
you.
all of your wisdom.
Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to be with you and be in your company. And I just so appreciate how you are blossoming and growing and evolving in your own right, and just watching the process that you've been going through since the passing of Trey, and how Trey is so instrumental in your life today, even though he's not in physical form. It just brings me great joy. So
Yes.
thank you for
Thank
having
you.
me.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you. I'm still, it wasn't very long ago, right at the fifth anniversary of his passing, which is just, a few weeks ago, you sent me that text message with the message from him, and you wouldn't have known that that was his anniversary. The anniversary
Oh, yeah, for the viewers watching this, right. I just, every now and then this happens, and I just felt the presence of Sarah's son, Trey, very, very strong, and sent her a text message. And then you told me it was the eve of the anniversary of his passing, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had no idea. And I just felt I was practicing my meditation and yoga that morning, and he just came full force. And I don't even know what the message said, but he wanted me to, I don't remember. I don't remember. That's the other thing. I don't remember for other people, which is probably a good thing. But I know it was very important that he wanted me to let you know that he was here, and I just forwarded it on to you. And yeah, I had no idea that was the anniversary. So
Yeah, it was a pivotal message at the right time. It was the perfect message, at exactly the time, the moment that I needed it. So,
fabulous. I'm so glad to hear that. Yeah. Yeah.
thank
Thank you.
you.
And this is what helps me to keep doing the work that I do, is when I hear this kind of feedback, it really makes
Yeah.
my heart sing. So thank you.
Yes, thank you
All
so
right.
much. Thank you
Yeah.
for
So
showing
much
up and
love
all
to
for your.
you and to all the viewers. Yeah. Thanks.
All right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
take care. Bye bye.